Hello everyone, and welcome back to my masterclass series on how to begin, start sewing your own cosplays, and really just try to get into cosplaying. Now, this is part 4 of the series in my last video, but this is something that I really like to tell new cosplayers that you totally can do. And that is modifying existing garments, accessories, props, anything to work for your own cosplay. This is something I actually do in almost every single one of my builds. I make something from scratch, but I will buy a lot of things and modify them as well. Mostly shoes, belts, some small accessories like that too. But the first thing I want to reiterate to everybody is that buying stuff for your costume is totally cool and very standard, actually. Jumping into cosplaying can be very scary at first because a lot of people only know cosplaying as you must create your garment from scratch. Everything is built from scratch. No, you can totally buy stuff, guys. It's totally cool. No one says you have to make everything from scratch. The only thing I will reiterate is that if you're entering like a costume contest or a cosplay contest, you'll probably want to make everything from scratch. Now, not necessarily shoes, but actually that helps. I've been in contests with people who have made their own shoes before. It's actually quite amazing. Within a lot of my builds, I buy stuff and alter them all the time. So I'm going to tell you in this video a lot of tips and tricks on how to alter your own, either it's boots, whether it's dolls, some tips and tricks on how to alter some pretty basic cosplay stuff. Before we get into ways to alter and some of the easiest ways to alter stuff, I want to say that buying things outright sometimes saves you a lot of money and saves you a lot of time. So it's totally cool to go out and go to Amazon and buy gloves without having to make gloves. Just understand that that is an option, guys. Sometimes the garment actually holds up better. If you are creating something from scratch and you've gotten down to, say, the boots, and you're like, I'm not sure how to make boots, I'm not gonna make boots, buy the boots. Most likely, it will hold up better on a normal convention day than you think, because creating shoes is kind of tough and very specialized, but I guarantee if you thrift a pair of boots and then just add armor on top of it, it will work perfectly for you. That's actually what I do with pretty much all of my cosplays that require boots. I thrift these boots from either online thrift sources or going to places like Goodwill and finding a very basic flat black boot and then just gluing on armor pieces. That is what I did with these boots specifically. These are for my Ahsoka Tano build. These are thrifted boots that I purchased off ThredUp and contact cemented foam armor on top. It works perfectly. It's a little squeaky, but it works. Cosplaying can get very expensive, so trying to thrift items and trying to reuse items is really handy. If you don't want to buy a new pair of boots or a new pair of shoes for every cosplay, consider making boot covers or shoe covers. There are several patterns out there on the internet and even in stores that you can purchase that show you how to make boot covers for basic boots that you love wearing that fit you very well, because I guarantee at a full day at a convention, your feet are going to hurt by the end of it, so you're going to want to be in shoes that you've broken in. Another example of altering an already created thing is this doll I have right here. This is my Nadja doll from the show What We Do in the Shadows. I cosplay Nadja from it, and the only thing that's actually something I created on this, besides her garment she's wearing, is the head. The actual body is an already existing ventriloquist doll that I purchased on Amazon that I weirdly took the head off and just used the body. And it saved me so much time and then just creating the head and not having to make the body. And she actually holds up a whole lot better like this, and I quite appreciate it. She even sits up by herself. But aside from these examples that I'm showing you, let's go over some ways to alter existing garments and other tips and tricks. One of the easiest ways to alter anything is to paint it. Now, that comes with a caveat because painting certain materials requires certain types of paints or certain mediums that are mixed into the paints, or just a different way of painting. Painting on foam is a whole different thing, but you'll want to know if you want to change maybe painting your boots and they're made of some faux leather or leather, using something called leather paint is something you're going to want to do. And this is my favorite brand. It is Angelus. This is great leather paint. Now, leather paint is a paint that has a little bit of elasticity to it. It moves, it stretches, it doesn't crack. And that is one of my favorite things about this. I use leather paint on almost everything I make, sometimes. But it's great for garments that you know are going to move, like shoes or sometimes even gloves. If you have a pair of leather gloves that you're wanting to change the color, using leather paint is ideal. Now you can apply it with a paintbrush, you can apply it with a foam brush, or you can airbrush it. One thing I want to mention when airbrushing is that you will need to use a medium to help bring down the viscosity of the paint so you can push it through the airbrush. A lot of brands of paint sell an airbrush medium that will help you thin the paint down to be able to push it through the airbrush. To continue on talking about painting, airbrushing is a great way to change colors and add depth and add anything you want to do and to your garments. I love airbrushing on things to give it a different look to it, a different dimension. If something reads very flat, like a color of a garment, adding some airbrush towards the edges of the garment, maybe around the seams, will give it a little bit of dimension and sometimes make it a little bit weathered, which is really neat. With airbrushing, we can talk about weathering certain types of garments with paint and water. Like you can dry brush, which means taking, just like it says, taking a brush, dipping it in some paint, and just kind of going to town on your garment and maybe wiping it off with a paper towel or moving it out of the way with your hand. That gives a really cool weathering look. Dry brushing definitely does that. Or you could mix a bunch of water into your acrylic paints and then kind of use what's called a wash onto your garment and also give a different color dimension if you don't want to airbrush or do anything like that. That also does work as well. These are common tips in what's called weathering. So if you have any other questions about how to weather something, doing a simple Google search on how to weather cosplay props will give you tons of cool information and even deeper dives into weathering with latex paint if you also want to do that too. With weathering comes also staining. You can stain fabrics and existing garments with acrylics. Sometimes you can stain them with like tea. You can do tea baths, and that also will change the look of the garment as well. And into that also leads into something called dyeing. Now, when talking about dyeing existing garments, I want to stress that these garments are already colored the way they are. If you have something that you want to take to a different tone, like a little bit of a darker tone, sometimes dyeing will work, but not everything will accept the dye that you put in. One of the things that I do want to stress is that there are two different types of dyes. There is a synthetic, and then there is a more natural type of a dye used for natural fibers like cottons and muslin and things like that. A lot of our clothes are made up of synthetic fibers. So when you are wanting to dye something and you don't necessarily know the fiber content, most likely go ahead and get the synthetic dye. I promise you it'll work a lot better. Synthetic dye usually requires a whole lot more of dye, and it also requires a much hotter heat source of water that you are putting your garment into. With dyeing, there are a lot of safety precautions, so please read the directions, wear a respirator. A lot of synthetic dyeing requires very, 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 very hot water for you to put your garment or fabric or anything into for the dye to even take to the materials. That's just how it is with synthetic fibers. You'll have to probably put your pot of water on your stove to boil the water to get this to even work. But when it does work, it's great. There's a lot of YouTube videos out there on tub dyeing, washing machine dyeing, if you want to alter a color of maybe a t-shirt or some kind of garment that you're wearing instead of having to make something. I know I did that for a couple different outfits that I've done that has a little more, that the outfits are more casual wear, I would say, and I just needed a certain type of color of shirt. Instead of having to go out and buy a new shirt or make it, I took an existing shirt and dyed it. Don't be afraid, if you want to buy a couple size larger in some kind of garment that you know you're going to tailor in to make it fit you better. That also sometimes works a lot, and I do that often with undergarments that I know I'm going to be wearing under things, so I need a slightly larger look that I know I'm just going to take in the sides a little bit, but I need the length. So don't be afraid to do that as well. That leads me to thrifting. I know I told you all these boots are actually thrifted, so don't be afraid to go into your local thrift stores and see what they have to go with your costume. Not everything needs to be built from scratch. Sometimes there's a black leather jacket out there that's just hanging out at a thrift store that if you maybe alter the hemline will work perfect for your outfit. So going out there and hunting and finding fun things like that, it's really exciting. There is a whole world dedicated to cosplay called closet cosplay that people love to do. And these people, I find it fascinating because I have a really hard time finding stuff in thrift stores if I don't know exactly what I'm looking for. But they will just go to thrift stores and pull a Doctor Who outfit out of nowhere, and it's extremely impressive. So if that's something you really want to look into keywords such as closet cosplay and hashtags and see what you can find. I guarantee it's pretty interesting. So to wrap this video up a little bit, just remember, it's okay to buy stuff for your costume. Not everybody's gonna see those shoes or understand that you didn't make your leggings that you're wearing underneath your ball gown to keep cool. It's okay to buy stuff. And remember, you don't have to make everything at all. So if you want to buy your boots outright, go for it. If you don't want to have to make gloves, buy gloves. Trust me, glove making, I don't care for that. It's quite difficult. So you can buy your gloves on Amazon or thrift your gloves and just paint them or dye them differently and they work perfectly. Okay, that's it for my masterclass series on beginning cosplay. I hope you guys really enjoyed these 4 videos. If you just looked at this video, please consider checking out my other videos on beginning sewing kit creation and learning how to work a sewing machine. Part 2 video is on understanding patterns and especially the store-bought patterns. And part 3 is how to choose fabrics for your costume. So once again, I am Jedimanda, and thank you so much for following along this series, and I'll see you guys next time.